Azure for this calendar year. Now, we've got a really special session today, a welcome to Mix session for the first speakers of this Azure meetup. So as you may know some of them. We've got Debac, Nilesh, Igor, and Prathap. Some of you may know Igor from his 99 Coffees if you're quite prevalent on LinkedIn, and Prathap is also known as one of our youngest MVPs globally, which makes me feel rather quite old. And we have locally, we've got Debac, who is our local guru in all things security. So next up, we want to talk about our sponsor, who is Arinco. So we do have our sponsor in our room, Daniel Lund in the corner. So Arinco is Microsoft's ANZ Partner of the Year in 2023, and also the CRN Fast 50 Resilience Award winner. They're recognised as the top company in CRN Fast 50 over the past 3 years. So we'd like to thank them very much for being able to provide the pizza and the drinks, not just for today's session, but over the last couple of months as well. So just quickly going over a bit of housekeeping, we'd like to remind everyone that today is a session for sharing and we're amongst our peers, so please be kind and respectful and happy learning. Next, just quickly, I realised coffee is quite important, so we do have a couple of coffee stations. They are self-serve. The nearest one to us is if you just go out this door here to the left, you will find a self-serve coffee station. In terms of if you need any assistance or you set fire to the coffee station, the fire extinguisher is in the kitchen, and just behind the reception desk, if you met our lovely ladies, is the first aid. If you're suffering the effects of the coffee, restrooms behind the elevators from where you came in. And then we've got our fire escapes, so unlikely to happen, but just take the stairs down behind the elevator. That will take us out onto the street in front of Auckland Transport or out the front via Sofitel. Next, so our speakers came from this form. If you would like to be our next speaker, please just register using this QR code or via AKMS/Auckland speaker and fill out the form, and we'd love to have more speakers from the community, from different, not just from different parts of the world like where Prathap's from India, but locally as well, to talk about your experiences or learnings in this space. And as always, please share your feedback. We develop these sessions for you, and we'd like to know how we can better serve your what you're interested in. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Igor and Nilesh. Nilesh is going to be joining online from Wellington. So Igor, I'll just let you hook up. So big welcome for Igor and Nilesh.
Thank you. We got Nilesh there. Nilesh, you can probably turn your video on if you can hear me. Oh, look at that.
Hello, everyone.
While I'm hooking up. Right. That didn't come onto the right screen, I don't think. We're good. Oh, yeah. Nilesh there. Yep, that's good. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for having me. It's a privilege. I've attended quite a few meetups. I know there's a mixed audience here. Just wanted to quick show of hands in the room. How many people here are engaged in software development or DevOps of some kind? Oh, there's a few of you. Fantastic. I was so for those of you who are not, I do apologize. My presentation is aimed a little bit more to the DevOps folk, but I'll try to keep things as simple as possible, and hopefully everybody else will learn something. But first of all, a little bit about us. So I've had the privilege of being in the IT industry in New Zealand for over 30 years. And back in early 2000s, I've built a company called Asterisk, which was one of the first New Zealand-based managed security service providers. So back then we were building firewalls and offering a managed security service. So my journey in the security industry started back then. Since I've helped many businesses implement technology, either software technologies or security. And for the last year and a half, I've been working with Nilesh, helping the Blacklock business grow. I'm glad you mentioned my 99 coffees. So please follow me on LinkedIn or connect to me on LinkedIn. I welcome new connections. I have had a lot of good feedback on those coffee posts. People say I make their LinkedIn experience a little bit more interesting. So do join in. And if you have a story to tell, reach out. You never know. You might be lucky. But my coffee calendar is kind of full for the next couple of months. So, so that's me. Nilesh, do you want to introduce yourself, or do you want me to do the honors?
Sure, I can do it. I'm having I can have the privilege to talk. So yep, I am the founder of Blacklock, right? We started this company in 2018, right? We started at the writing of the code in 2018, but launched in 2021. I am a pen tester by trade, so about 15 years of experience in that. I am also was a developer, right? And I was an author as well. I have few certifications, which is CPSA, CSSP, and CEH. And that's me.
Thank you, Nilesh. So what we'll do is we'll introduce you to DevSecOps and what this practice is all about, and we will give you a quick demo at the end of it. Unfortunately, since Nilesh cannot take over the presenter screen, we will have pre-recorded the demo, so I'll run the recording, and Nilesh will take you through what you see on the screen. But first of all, how many people here are familiar with the term DevSecOps? Okay, well, there's a lot fewer hands that people who are involved in DevOps, which is great, because this will be a bit more educational. So the sec in DevOps, so we're adding security to DevOps. So that's the idea of DevSecOps. And if you think about the traditional DevOps model, you've got the intersection of the development and operation, and there's a certain skill set that is part of that. Security often comes at the end of the cycle, and usually is driven by the ops folks. So they typically use some tools in order to do the security right. What we want to do is we want to encourage the culture amongst developers to also think about security when they do development. And where the DevSecOps come is inside the intersection of all three. So we'll try and bring, so it's not just about a bunch of tools or technologies. It's about people, it's about processes, it's about skills, and it's about culture of putting security front of mind when you are developing software. I probably don't need to preach to this audience why security is important. I don't need to give you any scary stories about people's credit cards and livelihoods destroyed. We've all heard those over the last few years. So today is just about the business of getting on to make sure that the software we deliver is secure. So why DevSecOps and not DevOps? So one of the main challenges is the digitization of our life is moving fast, and the traditional security models can't keep up with it. The ransomware industry 2 years ago was a $20 billion industry, and so people who are breaking in are getting smarter and they're getting better tools to do that. And so the traditional secure way to secure things isn't serving us really particularly well. So one of the terms that we use in DevSecOps is a term called shift left. And what the shift left term means is if you look at the DevOps lifecycle, where it starts at the planning stage, and then it goes through the coding, building, testing, releasing, and then the operations. Typically, the security comes in on the right side when you deploy, and we want to move it further left into the early stages. In fact, we want to start with planning. We want to start with planning. So how do you start with planning? Well, first of all, you need to look, as we said, we need to look at the culture. You need to make sure your developers are on board with you in terms of security is important. Then there are some tools. So in terms of the DevOps life cycle, the first lot of tools that you want to implement is with your inside your developers IDE environment. Then you want to integrate security tools into your DevOps CI/CD pipeline, and you've got tools like Microsoft Azure DevOps security code analysis extension. You want to have static code inspection tools like Blacklock with SonarQube extension. And then as you integrate and you implement your continuous integration and continuous development, you've got your OSA tools and dynamic application testing tools. And when you run things, you've got your infrastructure tools and container security tools. So at every stage of the way, we want to implement those tools. So why do we want to do that? Well, first of all, let's start with developers. There's a number of things that developers can accidentally do to breach their security. So, for example, leaking SSH keys when they release commit their code into repositories. So, what you want to do is you want to put some pre-commit hooks to make sure that that these things are checked. The other big one is we all are. I'm probably one of the biggest fans of open source software in the room, and been advocating for use of the open source technology in your development lifecycle. But it also comes with a challenge that when you download a piece of open source software from a repository, how do you know it doesn't come with some vulnerabilities or some malicious code inserted to it? How do you trust the repository that you're getting software from? So the static code inspection tools come into play, where they say, okay, well, they'll inspect the library and they'll tell you where there's vulnerabilities are. And then when you have built your software, you want to run some automated vulnerability assessment. And again, vulnerability assessment and manual penetration testing has traditionally come at the end of the life cycle, but you can now use the tools to trigger those tests from your CI/CD pipeline. So as you build, as you deploy, you can scan for vulnerabilities and figure out whether you have introduced some. And one of the main reasons you want to do that is the earlier you can catch a bug or a vulnerability, the cheaper it is for you in terms of your own time to fix it. So typically when you find problems once the software is released and up and running, fixing them is much more expensive, both in terms of time and potentially in terms of money, and you get much more people involved in it. If you can do that, if you can find these vulnerabilities earlier, you can fix them earlier. That makes for much faster and much more agile delivery of a safe and secure code. So this is another view of how you insert or inject security tools into your DevOps pipeline. So basically on every stage of the way of your DevOps process, you insert your security tools, and we will give you a flavor of some of the tools and how you do it in a moment. And before we do that, let me talk a little bit more about vulnerability management. So one of the big challenges that a lot of software development teams find in terms of vulnerability management is that there's a plethora of tools out there for vulnerability management, and each one of them presents a different report and different style of presentation. And a lot of the CISOs end up in this PDF management mode. So rather than managing security, they manage a whole bunch of emails and PDFs from different systems and different organizations between your manual pen testers and your automatic vulnerability scanners. So this was one of the reasons why we built a BlackLock system, is to provide a single pane of glass. We pull a number of industry standard tools, a mix of open source and commercial tools, into the BlackLock system, and provide you with both a single place to view all of the reports and also a single place to call and inject all these tools into your CI/CD pipeline. BlackLock is available on Azure Marketplace, so you can grab an instance and start playing with it right away. But how you do that is I'm going to jump out of the presentation and kickstart the pre-recorded demo, which Nilesh will be able to give you guys a flavor of. So we'll start with a static code analysis demo. Nilesh, take it away.
All right, thank you, Igor.
Restart
So
it.
in this video, right, we are going to do the static source code scanning using the SonarQube and BlackLock, right? The first step is basically setting up the SonarQube integration, right? We are giving it a name, choosing a language here, right? And we follow these steps to basically integrate the SonarQube with BlackLock, right? So what this essentially means is whenever you push a code to your repo, right, the scanning will automatically run and you will get the report onto the BlackLock dashboard. There are several other APIs that you can use to basically download the issues, the summary of it, and use it in your internal processes, right? So now here we are pulling the code from GitHub. Okay, so our code is hosted on GitHub, right? And we are pulling it to Azure as of now. You can play it on a 2x speed if you can. You go.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Right. So these are the steps to follow. Yeah, right. So essentially what we are doing is we are adding up a new SonarQube service endpoint. Okay. And then we will create the pipeline build configuration, right? So SonarQube extension is available. If it is not installed, right, you can install it, right, from the Azure marketplace. Right, so we enter the server URL, right? We enter the token so it can authenticate to our system. We give the service connection name there. Right, and now we will do the pipeline build configuration. So once this is done, right, and you click on save and run, right, every time you make a change to your code and push a commit, right, the scan should automatically run. So there is no need to actually log into any other system to kick off a security scan. Right? This is we are injecting it in the life cycle, right, to run the code, run the security scan on the go. Right, you can also see the progress from your pipeline. So once this is done, you should be able to see all of the results in one place here, right? So this screen shows you all of the issues here, right? All of the scans that you have run, right? You can download the Excel report, right, which is in a CSV format, right? And you can sort it, right, by the bug severity rating, right, or the issue name, right? Or you can browse it through here. You can filter it, right? And it will basically show you where is the issue, right? And where is the issue, right? And why is this an issue? So this goes for every vulnerability, bug, or code smell. Right. Igor, you can switch on to the next video, which is the dynamic application security scanning.
Cool. So this was the static inspection, and this is a demo on how we scan.
Right. So this dynamic application security is when you run a security scan in a runtime environment, right? When the application is already hosted, right? It is already deployed on QA or staging server, right? And it is still in the test mode. So traditionally, right, a pen tester or a security tester will actually run the tools such as Burp, Zap, right, these tools onto their local machine, and they will give you the report, right? Or they will actually start fixing up the low-hanging fruits from there, right? And with this dynamic application security scanning, right, here we are configuring our CI/CD pipeline to actually run the security scan, right, run all of those tools directly from your CI/CD pipeline. So you are basically triggering your Bob, Zap, Nuclear, Nicto, and Map, right? All of those standard tools, right from the CI/CD pipeline. Right? So you don't actually have to manually configure each and every tool and run it. Right? So at the end of it, you'll basically get the report right onto the dashboard. So with the system, right, what we have tried to do is um, we have actually kept the DAST and the SAT scanning right onto the same platform. And from the vulnerability management perspective, right, all of the issues are on one dashboard. And the use of the multi-tool approach here is to basically cover the maximum attack surface area. So these are the APIs, right, in the video right now, right, which you can use in your pipeline to see how many issues has been identified. And using these issues, you can actually set up a trigger in your CI/CD pipeline saying whether this will go into production or not, or make a decision of a go or no go.
Awesome, thank you. Nilesh, I think we're out of time. So I'll just go back to the. We're done. So if there's any, do we have any time for questions or we?
Absolutely. Yeah. Minutes. There's actually a question online.
Yep.
So Jack has asked how to compare this with Sonar Cloud.
Right. So
yep,
I'm happy to answer this one. Sonar Cloud is also one of the options that you can use, right? It's just about maintaining two tools or one tools, right? So as Ego said, you can use multiple tools, right? So you can also use Sonar Cube onto your local machine or local environment, right? Or you can use Sonar Cloud, right? But you just have to manage those different instances on your own. So with this platform, okay, what we have tried to do is we have tried to consolidate everything into one place. Right? So yeah, you can use the Sonar Cube Cloud. There is no difference.
Also, sorry, I'll add to this, Nilesh, is typically our clients use Blacklock services in order to provide evidence to their certification authority or clients, evidence of them running regular tests and evidence of what they do about it. So having all of the reports in one place gives you a much easier way to compile that evidence for your certification authority or for your clients to say, hey, we ran the test and here's what it will come up with. Here the fixes we've done. By the way, warning to everyone: running a perfect test is we haven't really seen any systems that come up with absolutely no vulnerabilities, and both clients and certification authorities are pretty attuned to the fact that nobody writes perfect code. So the evidence of you doing something about it means you tested, you found vulnerabilities, you fixed them. That's the kind of pattern that that people are looking for. Yep, Don.
Do you support infrastructure as code languages in your testing, or is it purely software application code sets that we're looking at?
It's a good question. In terms of the dynamic testing or static testing, either. So dynamic testing, we support pretty much anything. We come in from the outside of your perimeter wearing hacker hat, and so the tools would pretty much test any type of code. In terms of static code, the Sonar Cube, Nilesh, is infrastructure.
Yep, there are plenty of languages that we support on that. So it's Java, .NET, PHP, right? Or you can use any other language, which is Python, right? Those are supported as well. So on the dynamic application security scanning, right? We actually do it from both authenticated and unauthenticated perspective, right? And we do a cookie-based authentication there. And here it's on the dynamic application security side, right? When you do a testing, you test each and every parameter of the request or of the post request, right? So I'll say it is platform independent, right? For the sake of automated security scanning. When we do manual pen testing, yes, the language and the platform matters, right? And we can actually do that using the manual technique.
Thinking something like Terraform.
I was, yeah.
Yeah, I thought, yeah, it was something like Terraform. But infrastructure as code.
Nilesh, Terraform.
Yeah, Terraform is supported as well. Okay. Yeah, that is covered as well. We are happy to cover it offline.
Thank you. Good question. Yep, I'll stick around. So if you got any more questions, come and ask me. Won't have the technical backup, but I can also take a question and come back to.
Thank you. Coming to the stage, Debac.
Of an introduction, but thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Debac. Quick intro is I'm a Senior Security Operations Engineer from DEFIN. I've been working with the security operations team for almost a couple of years, and I moved into some engineering work. So we've been building some automations, integrations, anything that makes lives easier for the operations team to make things quicker and automated way. So one of the primary SIEM tools that we've been using is Microsoft Sentinel. Most people might have been heard of it. Has anyone heard using? You? That's good. So the difference that I've noticed between Sentinel and every other SIEM platform is a bit moderate, but those are the topics that we've been going to be discussing for today. Most people think Sentinel as a basic SIEM and a SOAR solution, but it has a few more capabilities that's above and beyond that is still a little bit away from other SIEMs that have been coping up at the moment. So the three things that I want to talk about today is basic logs are kept here. I'll be zooming into each and one of it. So sorry about that. Second one would be about data collection rules, and third would be about the Codeless Connector Platforms. So starting with quick note, there's been a huge misunderstanding about the way SIEM and SOAR has been treated all these years. So I'd like to always call traditional SIEM versus a modern SIEM. Microsoft Sentinel, of course, is a modern day SIEM. One of the biggest myths that needs to be debunked to adapt to the whole modern SIEM solution is that SIEM is not a log storage platform. I've seen heaps of customers coming up in a way that we need to dump some logs in a SIEM solution. And when we ask the question is why, it's more of a for security, but we don't know what we're going to be doing with it. What is a use case? They don't understand the actual value behind it, but it's more of, I have some firewall logs, I want to dump it in there. I have some audit logs, I want to dump it in there, but not looking behind the reason of it or the use case behind why you need to do that. Especially when for all the modern day SIEM solutions, I like to call 3 modern day SIEM solutions as from Microsoft, Palo Alto, and Google. And all 3 of them are on the cloud. So they're going to be a bit expensive than your old school traditional SIEM solutions. So when you ingest your logs, you need to understand what logs are you going to be ingesting and why you need them. If there is no value provider in there, you shouldn't be even ingesting those logs in the first place. So SIEM is not a log storage platform. Second point is the no rules, no visibility. I've also come across some scenarios where people ingest the logs, but they don't build any detection rules on top of it to actually use them. So a bit of a misconception is that once you ingest the logs into SIEM solution, you're already covered. You already have security monitoring and stuff, which is not really true. You need to build dedicated use cases or covering the threat landscape for whatever the logs you're ingesting and build detection rules. Sentinel, of course, for each and every single log source that you're ingesting. If you're downloading a solution from the Sentinel's marketplace, we call it as Content Hub, it would be coming up with a set of detection rules. Say, for example, you're going to be ingesting Cisco logs or Fortinet logs for whatever reason. They would be having a predefined standard templates from Microsoft by itself saying that if you're going to be ingesting Cisco, you might want to check the open ports that's going to be misused or coming from a different IP address, all this kind of stuff. So they have a set of defined logics that you can use it for yourself. Or if it's for a specific organization that you have your own custom logics that you want to build, it's easy enough to build your own detection rules as well. So end of the day, if there are no rules, you're not covering up. Just between the logs and the detection rules, there is a gap which needs to be filled as well. Third point is SIEM without SOAR. I would like to call it as a slow poison. Initially, when you start with old school or a few years ago, we would be seeing 10 alerts or 15 alerts per day, whatsoever. But the more and more the complex the attacks are getting, the organization is getting bigger and bigger, you would be getting heaps and heaps of false positives that you need to be covering on that. So to avoid that, it's not just a SIEM that's going to be sufficient for yourself. You also need SOAR solutions, which is the security orchestration, automation, and response. So you need to be investing in automations to remediate some stuff so that you don't have to keep repeating or keep responding to the same old false positives over and over again. We've also come across some scenarios where if you don't invest in SOAR automations, you would end up spending more and more time responding to false positives. And I still remember a quote where it's not the silence that you need to be afraid of, it's actually the noise that you need to be looking for. So there's always a chance that one single true positive might be hiding among 100 false positives. To make sure that you don't miss that, always try and tune out or make sure that you have some level of automation that's going to be responding to your incidents in that space. So three myths that has been debunked by the modern day SIEM solution. These are things that you need to be across. Sweet. First thing, I'll be talking about the basic logs and architecture. Before jumping into this, if you've already been using Sentinel for normal day-to-day operations or for your organization, you would notice that the log type would be analytic. So that's the default type of the log that's getting ingested into Sentinel, which is roughly $4 New Zealand dollars, I believe so, which was fine when you ingest just the logs that you require or the ones that you calculate with values and stuff. But moving down the line, when more organizations started adapting Sentinel as their primary SIEM solution, they still wanted to have firewall logs or DNS logs in the Sentinel just for threat hunting, but not even for detection rules. So Microsoft had to come up with a way that we don't want to price you up for the whole plan for analytics. So we can come up with a balance where there's a plan called Basic, which is something not many people might have heard. But again, if you've already heard about it, that's a good one. It's 1/4 of the cost of the actual plan. But obviously, when the cost cuts down, you would be having a bit of restrictions. So The first thing, basic log, it's a very, very cheaper log ingestion. I think it's 1.25 New Zealand dollars, I believe so, per gigs. So which should be much more cheaper than when you compare to analytic plan. The caveat is that it's only for 8 days of log retention. I've had customers say that it might not be enough if you have 8 days of log retention for a threat hunting. I kind of disagree on that. The reason why I say I've been coming from the operations team, and when you have an incident, let's say, touch wood, there is an incident today, and if you want to go back in the logs to find the entry point, unless if it's like a complicated attack, 95% of the incidents would only require you to go back for the last 7 days of the logs to do threat hunting. Anything more than that, seems like you've been missing on some of the gaps in detection control. So if you can satisfy 95% of the problem with 8 days, 7 days in theory, but Microsoft is going to be offering +1 just as a buffer as 8 days of log retention, that's really sufficient enough for threat hunting purposes as well. So it does satisfy the use case for threat hunting, even though there is a major incident or whatever you want to look at. The limited usability that I've noticed, and which is still getting built up on top over and over again with Microsoft, is that you cannot use every single operator on the basic logs. So if you have the analytic plan, which is the normal logs, you can use any kind of operator like summarize, joining the tables, or if you want to combine different things using a union operator, all this kind of stuff, you can still do it without any restrictions. With basic logs, initially they started with a limited capability saying you can still use some of the operators, but you can't join 2 different tables. I think now we can still join 2 tables, but you can't combine them with specific column or whatsoever. So they're still building it on top of it, and it's getting better every single month. At least I would say there's an update on that. In terms of cost, like I said, it's 1.25 New Zealand dollars roughly, I believe so. So that would cover up all the use cases where people say, I want to ingest the firewall logs. I'm not going to be creating any alerts, but I just want some visibility for monitoring or like just to do some manual threat hunting. That's where basic logs would be coming in. So that was point 1 from Microsoft. And people started giving feedback saying that, yep, I love this, but I also want to have a longer storage just in case. So the initial solution or the old school solution is to always dump it into a blob storage. Everyone know what a blob storage is? Like it's just an online cloud storage in Azure that you dump it in there. The problem with that is to send your logs to blob storage, you need to have a dedicated solution. And to pull the logs back from blob storage to your Sentinel or any log platform, you need to build another automation to do that. You need to have some maintenance so that you need to have a manpower to build it, maintain it, have an identity, heaps of failure points in there, works, but it's good. What's supposed to happen? Sorry. So yeah. So Microsoft team, Sentinel's engineering team, decided to come up with their own inbuilt in-house solution just for having a longer term of storage. So instead of taking the logs entirely to a different platform, building automations and stuff, you can have your own archive tier, which is the third plan on the type of the logs, which is archive logs, which is much more cheaper, but you can't ingest directly into archive tier. So obviously you can see that you have the ingestion for the basic logs and you have the storage for archive tier through the archive logs as well. So you ingest it on basic and then archive it for storage. If you want for a year or whatsoever, the maximum it can go is until 12 years of log retention. I did some quick math the other day, and if you want to have 1 year of log storage on your archive, it's just 5% increase. So let's say you pay $100 every month whatsoever, and if you want to have archive tier enabled for all your logs, it's going to be paying $105. So when it comes to the box, it shouldn't be much expensive for a year of long-term log storage as well. Speaking of the search, speaking of bringing the logs back from the archive store to back into your log analytics to do the threat hunting, earlier, again, you need to have some kind of automation built, but Microsoft has a native capability to do that as well. You just say, this is the table I want, this is the user I want, or this is the IP address that I'm looking for. From this date to this date, get me all the logs, and boom, it brings it all back in there. So you don't need to invest in any amount of automations or integration to do that. So a quick comparison is that before the whole basic logs and archive tier came into the play, you had to send the logs from your log analytics workspace to a blob storage via data export, which is easy, which is fine. But if you want to pull it back, you need to have a logic app or something to pull the logs back into log analytics workspace when the incident happens. The problem is that when you pull it, you wouldn't be having granular control of saying that I just want it between these specific date. You need to add another capability on top. Cool. And then you need to say, I don't want every single table. I just want this specific table. On this specific table, I just want this specific user's logs. So you will be adding more and more and more complexities on your automation, which is what is now saved by Sentinel Archive Tier. With Archive Tier, now all you need to do is just say, click, 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 couple clicks, and you can just send all the logs to Archive Tier for a year or up to 12 years of log retention. And even if you want to restore the logs, you just go to the search and restore capability in Sentinel, say, this is the table, this is the user I want, IP address, whatever the condition you want to give. You can use a KQL to control your whatever the condition you want to put in there as well, and click back, and it will dump it into a news table for you to do threat hunting. So this is how the whole longer term of retention has been made much more simpler in Microsoft Sentinel in the last year or couple of years, I would say. The next part is data collection rules. One of my favorites, I would say. The biggest benefit of data collection rule, I would say, is the log filtering capability. Because when you have a firewall or 365 Defender logs or whatsoever, you wouldn't need 100% of your logs all the time. One of the scenarios that I've encountered with 365 Defender device logs is that we had a customer who wanted to ingest the device logs into Sentinel, but they had 40% of MMD devices, which is Microsoft Managed Desktop, so which wouldn't even fall under the scope of security operations, because Microsoft is going to be managing the entire devices, security operations, all those for that. So why do we still have to pay the extra 40% of the logs that we're still ingesting in there? To avoid that, is there a way to cut down that, saying that if the log contains a device name that starts with MMD- whatsoever based on your condition, can you actually filter it down? The old school way is to have another third-party platform. One of my favorites as well is the Cribble. Not sure if people might have heard about it. It's a log forwarding platform. You can also do log filtering in that space. But in this scenario, you're getting the logs from Microsoft environment to an external party, and then bringing it back into Microsoft environment. So instead of involving a third party to bring the logs all the way around the different platforms, you can have a native way to filter the logs through data collection rules as well. So it's not just for filtering them. You can also do manipulation. Say, for example, you have a device name that comes in all uppercase, but you want it on lowercase. Before the log gets ingested, you can convert them to lowercase. If you want to do some datetime functions, any kind of a KQL function that you want to operate it, convert the log to a specific value in the column, you can do that as well. The third is the log redirection. So you can collect the logs from one source, and you can actually ingest into 2 different tables, 3 different tables, depending on however you want that as well. So filtering, manipulation, and redirection has been made much more easier with the introduction of data collection rules. So most of the time when I talk about this to customers, think that, cool, this is a really, really cool capability, but I would suspect it's going to be coming at a cost, which is not the case here. So it is a entirely free capability if you have a log analytic workspace that is ingested to Sentinel. So if you already have a log analytic that's attached with Sentinel, it's fully free, of course. Let's say you don't have a Sentinel attached to it, you only have log analytic workspace attached to it. So it's just the log analytic workspace. You can still have free cost as long as the logs you're dropping down is less than 50%. Anything more than 50%, you would still be paying a charge for that. And even that is 0.238 New Zealand dollars per gigabyte. So that's $20 for, if you want to drop like 60 or 70% of the logs, you would pay like $20 in total for the whole month or whatever. So it's very cheap in that space, scenario as well. The next thing is to writing a filter. How hard is it to actually write a filter? Because with Cribble, you need to have a specific language, or you need to be familiar with the way Cribble works to understand the whole logic of filtering the logs. In this scenario, you're just going to be using KQL. People who've been working with Sentinel would be familiar with the language KQL, which is custom query language. You use it almost every single day. So it's much more native to write a query language to say that this is the condition I want to drop the logs or whatsoever. So before and after comparison, you had to get your logs from 365 Defender to a third-party environment Cribble, do the log filtering, and then you have another integration on the other side of the Cribble to say you need to send the logs to Microsoft Sentinel's log analytic workspace or whatsoever. So instead of taking it all the way around the world, you can now simply just add one data collection rule in between, so your logs never leave the Microsoft environment at all. So makes it much more native and efficient, as well as cheap, I would say. Sweet. So that's data collection rules. Codeless connector platforms. This was announced 2.5 years ago, roughly 3 years ago, I would say. There's heaps of data connector. So data connector, as a background context, is that when you want to collect a log from a source platform, firewall, Cortex, 6DR, endpoint protection, or any kind of a platform, there's heaps of data connectors inbuilt from Microsoft that say that you just need to give me the credentials, whatever the service principal, identification, or whatsoever, and I'll automatically do that log collection for you and ingest them into Sentinel. As the requirements started growing, people started saying, like, can I actually build my own data connector? So there was a bit of a hassle at that. Like, you can still build your own log collections using logic apps or a function app. People who are familiar with Azure would already recognize that these are some of the compute platforms that's going to be doing the log collection. You can customize it in a way to do an API call, do the log collection, and then point it out to a log analytic workspace or do that. So Microsoft Sentinel team decided to make it much more simpler on that as well, saying that we're going to be announcing a new capability called Codeless Connector. It doesn't involve writing any code. It's going to be just a JSON structured format that's going to be coming in. So it can do log collection, ingestion, as well as visualization. So in terms of the log collection, I'm just going to break down to 3. So log collection is going to be, you give an API endpoint. It's purely just API based, and you give an API endpoint and you say, this is the API token, API key, or if you use basic authentication for your platform or an OAuth 2, JWT token is a work in progress at the moment, but the team is already actively working on that as well. So regardless of these 4 methods, as long as your source platform can support these 4 authentication methods, you don't have to build your own compute platform at a cost to maintain it. I love logic apps, but the problem with logic apps is that when you build something for Sentinel or any kind of log collection, you need to have an API connection, you need to have the resource by itself, you need to have a managed identity, permissions, all this kind of stuff. Everything is abstracted and put into one single platform. So you don't have to worry about any of those kind of stuff. In terms of log ingestion, when you deploy the data connector will be the codeless connector. When you deploy it, it's automatically going to have the permissions for you to ingest the logs for whatever it is collecting the logs from as well. So you don't have to handle the authentication part as well. Less hassle to actually maintain credentials or whatsoever. Log visualization, this is another thing that we've noticed. When people build their own logic apps or whatsoever, you can see that the logs are coming in, but you won't have a way to visualize the logs to see that, am I actually getting proper logs every single day, every single week? If something fails, you won't be able to see it unless the incident fails or you need to have a manual look into the tables every single day or whatsoever. Instead, you can also build a data connector, like a plain data connector that does nothing, but just visualize the logs on a fancy graph to show you that this is down, this is disconnected, or this is connected, I'm seeing some active logs, etc. So all 3 capabilities of a normal data connector is now being supported by Codeless Connector Platform. So you can build your own connectors as well. Again, how expensive is it? Is most of the time I get a question from the customers. It's fully free. There's no cost at this other point as well. Of course, you would be paying for the log ingestion, where on the log analytic workspace side, rather than the platform by itself, is entirely free of however you want to do that. Initially, when Codeless Connector started, it had to be, you collect the logs, you ingest directly in there. There was no capability to attach a data collection rule to the Codeless Connector. But now with less than 6 months ago, Microsoft Sentinel team has released a preview version of, it's a public preview as well. You can feel free to try it out. You can build your data connector in a way that you collect the logs and you want to ingest it. But before you ingest, you can attach it to a data collection rule so that, like we discussed earlier, you can actually filter the logs even before it gets ingested. So that's much more native and really cool capability that we are trying to build for one of our customers for other log sources as well. So before and after comparison, easiest comparison is to use Azure Logic App. Like I said, it's pretty much straight as API request, API response, and you ingest the parsed data back in there. But if there is some issues with the parsing, you need to put some custom values in there. You need to have a managed identity put in there. If someone removes the permissions accidentally on the managed identities, you'll be having some trouble. So ingest the logs in there. So all these have been abstracted directly into the Codeless Connector. So you don't have to worry about authentication or any kind of stuff on that space. So that's Codeless Connector Platforms. That's mostly me, to be honest. Feel free to follow me on, give a connection request on LinkedIn. I've written a bunch of articles about these three platforms, as well as a couple of other things that if anyone's interested, I'm happy to have a chat offline on that as well. Any questions?
People warmed up. We have an online consensus that log collecting is not security.
That is true. That is that's one of the myths that people usually think as well is I'm already collecting the logs, so which means I'm already covered. I have security covered, and they're like, nah, you're not. Nah, you're not.
I did have a question about the archive tier.
Yeah.
Is it the same kind of SLAs in terms of archive storage for the restore within 12 hours? The answer from an archive tier.
The time to pull the logs back in? Oh, it's pretty immediate. You don't have any dedicated time frame. But now I've done some testing, and it usually takes 2 to 3 minutes, depending on the volume of the logs. If it's going to be heaps of gigs of data, what do you want to do? It's just going to take like maximum of 10 to 15 minutes that I've seen in there. Anything else? We good?
Luke, is there any questions online? Missed? Like that's a no.
Nah, no questions is what I like. That's all good. Kidding.
I won't stress test you too much.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Speaker is not quite online yet, so we might just take a bit of a break for 10 minutes. So we'll get some more drinks and water coming out, but yeah, please mingle and expand your network.
No bit.
Tired a little bit.
Hi online, thanks for waiting if you're still with us. I think what we'll do is we might close off early. Unfortunately, it's quite late for Prathap. He probably missed his alarm. It's 5:30 a.m. where he is at the moment. But that's all right. I call it stupid o'clock. We might get him again in another session. I'm sorry if you were waiting and hoping for a session on OpenAI, but in any case, if you wanted to stick around for another 25 minutes to keep networking, please feel free.
Can do a thing on AI.
If you really wanted a thing on AI Studio, DSR can step in. If you want to put up your hands online.
I just want to go home. I want to go home.
You want to go home?
You want to see the AI Studio, or do you want to go home?
Yep.
I want to see AI Studio.
Okay, we got 3. Okay, I'm gonna
Okay, you got 25 minutes for AI Studio. All right, we're back, folks. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll bring out some more water for everyone. Yeah.
So happy that we had you.
Sorry.
Yeah. Let's. I really.
give me a tick to get set up.
Yeah, let's connect. See that you.
Microsoft
Sit on it. Try another one.
Okay.
Yeah. Man.
Oh, okay, cool.
Please,
Just wanted to double check.
please. No.
Like, they're like, you
No,
want
no,
same page
no.
or
Yeah, of course.
All right.
yeah, like I'll give it. Yeah.
So, can you hear me all right?
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Well, I didn't expect to be doing a demonstration on AI Studio today, but lucky enough, I always have something prepared because, give me a second, I'm going to go and grab a PowerPoint presentation. You can actually see something that we put together for an event in Australia a couple of weeks ago, where we thought, you know what, we need to demonstrate this new AI Studio. We also need to get people to understand and think about how do we actually do AI at scale. A lot of people are doing POCs, they're building stuff with Azure OpenAI. They're maybe doing some retrieval augmented generation here. They're maybe doing some Q&A stuff here. They're doing bits and pieces. The problem is this does not work at scale. And we're seeing this now. We're seeing that a new approach is needed to reach, really help people do this, where they need to do many of these AIs. They need to do it repeatedly. They need to update their data. They need to do all this other stuff. So, okay, I think it's in here somewhere. I'm just finding my deck.
Yeah.
Give me a sec. I have so many of these. Might just let me just go into here. The only reason I want the deck is just to give you a couple of key points. You can if you want. Don't worry, there's nothing sensitive in here. This is all my. Let's just use this one here. Okay, I'm gonna give you a couple of key pieces of or terminology, I guess. So, all right, I don't even have my clicker. Wait for this to load. I promise this is mostly going to be demos, but I just want to give you a few key concepts. So what is AI Studio? So AI Studio is basically an umbrella of a number of different technologies and products that Microsoft has brought together under this sort of one topic or area. AI Studio includes not only the products or joining all these things together like Azure OpenAI Service, Azure Speech, Azure AI Search, but also how to do this, how to adopt a new way of working. We're going to call this LLM Ops, but if you say, please try saying LLM Ops 3 times fast, it does not work. So we've started calling it LMOps. But that is large language model ops, and it's very similar to what we've been doing with, with data science, and we've started to use, the approach of ML ops or machine learning ops, because data scientists have learned that with data science, you can't just say, yes, that's true, or if you're doing a test or evaluating something that you've built, you can't just say, yeah, you're good, that's a pass or a fail. Unlike traditional development, right? Traditional development, write a unit test, passes or it fails. It should do one of those two things. If it's doing something else, you've got a problem. So with MLOps, we adopted this approach of using tools and pipelines to repeatedly create or train models and then set up the inference and do all the data engineering, the things that we need to do over and over again. So AI Studio was an attempt, or a first attempt, at saying, let's bring all that stuff together, do all the MLOps stuff that we've been doing for many years now, bring that across into the AI space where we have now got all this new set of tools. So quickly, 80% of organizations believe AI will give them a competitive edge. Anyone agree with that? Is anyone, okay, cool. Anyone disagree? Anyone think AI is not a big deal?
87% of the companies is using them.
Well, that's the thing. That is the thing. 87% believe that. Unfortunately, not 87% of organizations are actually doing it. So our job is really to have a look at what is the things that is stopping them doing it. So I'm going to just jump forward a couple of slides because there's a lot of preamble here, and I just want to give you an idea of what AI Studio actually is. Wow, I realize there's a lot of rubbish that I cut out when I did this last time. So, no, let's just jump into a demo, right? Let's go straight into a demo. This is not going to be fun if I'm just sitting here going through slides. Okay, so let me go into the right one. Let's have a look. Oh, you get to see AI Studio, all of AI Studio, in fact. This is, I'm going to go into home. So what is AI Studio? AI Studio, as I said, is a suite of tools or an environment inside Azure that allows you, it brings you together, brings all of these other tools together. But it allows you to use not only Azure OpenAI models, it allows you to use Hugging Face models, lots of other different LLMs and non-language models such as DALL-E and Stable Diffusion, and there's a whole bunch of other ones. But the idea is we create projects, and in those projects we create pipelines that do repeated things like running a chat service or generating embeddings or vectors for retrieval augmented generation. So what I'm going to do now is I've got a quick demo of Hammerbarn. Now Hammerbarn, in case you didn't know, there is a DIY place in Australia and New Zealand called Bunnings. They have a bunch of products that they sell. Now, when we created this demo, this is nothing to do with Bunnings. We thought, well, we need a name for a fictional DIY place. So we used Hammerbarn. And Hammerbarn, if you don't know, is actually the fictional DIY place in Bluey, an Australian cartoon. We chose to use this name because we thought, oh, well, no one will know this. A couple of weeks later, Bunnings changed their name temporarily to Hammerbarn. So we did it first, but they did it. So we're using Hammerbarn. And what I did, I thought, well, let's demonstrate what does it look like to create from their many, many thousands of products. How do we set up a process to ingest all those products into an AI search index so that we can build a Q&A bot over all of that data? And that is what we call RAG. But often what people, when they think about RAG, they don't really think about, well, how do I do this over and over and over again? Because you can imagine Hammerbarn gets product updates thousands of times a day. They have many different sources of data. So how do they do that? So I've landed in AI Studio. This is, all you do is you go to ai.azure.com. I'm going to zoom in a bit here. Oh, makes my screen look very strange. When I jump in, I get access to my recent projects. I can have a look at the models that are available for me to go and use as part of my pipelines, my flows. But I can go into Explore, which is a good place to really start to see what you get to see in here. So when we go into Explore, we get a deep look at all of the models that we can use in a flow. Everything is implemented around something called prompt flow, which is really just a syntax or a DSL on how to define these pipelines. But don't worry, it's all UI based, or code first if you prefer. I prefer code first, but we're going to use UI based. So as you can see, we've got all our Azure OpenAI models, but if we want to go and deploy a model, say from Meta, we can select model from Meta. We can say, let's do Llama 7B Python, and we can go and deploy that as a model on a real-time endpoint. That'll go say, give me a VM, all good. We can turn on or off content safety. That's another thing to remember. A lot of these open models, they are fantastic, but they don't necessarily have content safety built in, baked in. So you do need to think about how you go and add that. But if I skip that content safety, I can go and it's given me a big warning, don't do that, but I can go and deploy that and off it'll go. Say, where do you want that machine? I'll go and spin up a machine, go on, etc. And I don't have the actual Azure credit to do that. So you'll get a lot further than I am. So I will cancel that because we don't need a model because we're going to use Azure OpenAI. So again, we can go into the model catalog. We have actually already deployed the Azure OpenAI models. So we don't need to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go and build some stuff. So as I mentioned, I have thousands of products. I actually put them all in Fabric. So this is our Fabric data. We're not having a talk on Fabric, but I thought, well, what I'll do is I have all these products as a big set of text files in a folder in Fabric. And they look like this. They're just blocks of text. Now, the product name, I actually used Gen AI to create the product name from the product description and attributes because I thought, I don't want to use real names. I'll just randomly, well, not randomly, get generative AI to create them. I could use JSON, but I chose to use text. And what I've done is I've gone over to here in Azure OpenAI Studio. I've gone into data and I've said, you know what, I can select data. Now, this is really important because our data is now versioned when we add it into Azure AI Studio. This is very similar if you've used Azure ML. You create data assets and you version them because that's an important factor because when you're doing RAG or you're evaluating whether your AI solution, your Copilot performs correctly, you need to know which version of your data did you use. That will make a very big difference. So what I could do is I could select add your data. I've already created my Hammerbarn data product. Notice that is in Fabric. And this is all what I was seeing in Fabric before. Click that, click next, say Hammerbarn product 2, because I've already got Hammerbarn there. Create, and what it's going to do is actually going to create a pipeline to ingest that for me. And I can then change that pipeline. That's the cool thing. What if I wanted to enrich this data on the way in with stock values or stock levels? Probably that's not the best way to do that, but say I wanted to bring in safety documents. Say I had lots of safety products and I want to put in, recommendations on electrical safety on each product. I could do that as part of the data pipeline. But what I'll do is we don't want to wait for that. That's actually going to go and run. But what we want to do is I've got the products here. And as you can see, once this loads, this is the actual data. I can look through, I can reversion this, I can create a new version of that data. And I can also look at old versions. I can look at other ones that I've pulled in, which was obviously a couple of weeks ago. But once I've got the data, I can turn that into an index. Now, an index is required by retrieval augmented generation. It is generally a vector-based index, but it doesn't have to be. This is a process I need to do over and over and over again. So you want to automate this. You want to create a pipeline. So we go new index. We select our data store. You use existing project data. I will use my products. I think this is the right one. I've created many. Select the AI search. So this is the actual Azure AI search that I have already deployed. So this is an Azure AI search service. I've already created it, incidentally, but if I hadn't, I could go and create that. I'm going to select add a vector search to this resource. I don't have to, but this will automatically give me a much better quality of search results. I've selected the OpenAI resource. This is deployed automatically as part of AI Studio. When you create AI Studio, you get to, it creates everything for you. You don't really have to do that, but you might have had multiple. So I don't, I'm just going to click next. And I'm acknowledging that I should tell you, I'm acknowledging this because I'm actually going to create a text embedding model to generate the vectors, or I'm actually deploying that. And that will cost, and that's what it's telling us. Not that the deployment is going to cost anything, but running it through the embedding model will. I click next, it's going to check a few things. It's going to, I could say products 10. I don't know how many products indexes I've created before. And what I can actually do is select auto select to run this on a VM. So a VM virtual machine will spin up, run my pipeline, and shut down. And the good thing, the reason why this is you need to do it over and over again. If you're familiar with the Azure AI Playground, you've probably done it through there. And that will do it pretty well, but it doesn't give you a pipeline. So I could click next, and it will go and spin that up. But I'll show you, in the interest of time, I'll just show you what that would end up looking like. I've got a products v2, and as you can see, what it's done is it's created this pipeline for me. I can even see the job that was run, the data that was processed by it. But I can go, if I click through job details, it's going to open up Azure ML. So if you're familiar with Azure ML, this will be very familiar to you. So as you can see, AI Studio and Azure ML work together. This was the pipeline that was run. It cracked, chunked, and embedded my data. It ran it through the Azure, should actually say Azure AI Search Index. This needs to be renamed. It's no longer ACS, it's AIS. Register the vector index asset, because that becomes an asset that we can then reuse in any of our other pipelines. All right, so we've done that. We've created our index, and we are going to now play with it. Right, so we've got our playground. So normally we would have created our index in our pipeline of the playground, but we're not going to do that. We are going to just quickly go into the playground. We are going to, where's our, it's all a little bit weird here. We're going to change this to GPT-4. We're going to, where's my, just going to make this a little bit smaller. There we go. Going to add our data source. That was our data source, Azure AI Search. I'm going to call this index, well, the index is products. Yep. Select an embedding model. Yep. So all I'm doing is I'm telling the generative AI, hey, you can use RAG for this, and here's the index. This could all be customized. You might have generated your index in a custom way with custom properties, but I haven't. So I'm just ticking through everything. Now I've added my data. I can say, hey, I'm really cold. Help me heat my house. I should have said, the only reason I said I didn't import all 180,000 products. So what it's done is it's gone off to it's looked at my question. It's first classified what I asked. Hey, I want you to look up a product for me, or help me solve something that requires products. It is then generating an embedding. It is passing my question to an embedding model, generating a vector, and taking that vector back, and then using that to search the AI search database. It is then coming back with, say, 10 results that look kind of good enough. You know, they look like they're related. And as you can see, it's given me some. Interestingly enough, it didn't say, hey, just use a heater. If you look down at the answer here, I'll just get rid of this. It's given me a wall heater with blower, but it's also, it's given me a nice natural gas heater. It's given me a 80% saving gas furnace, but it's also recommended insulation and window insulation kit. So it hasn't just said go buy a bunch of heaters, right? Now, I actually forgot, normally I would put the system assistant, and actually I have that written down somewhere. I've got a very long message I would normally have put in there, but even though I didn't put it in there, it's done a fairly good job. So what has actually happened all behind the scenes when I created this and ran this, what actually happened was a prompt flow was created. And I'll just give you a quick look at what that looks like. So this is the actual prompt flow that was created by my playground when I implemented that. And this is what a prompt flow looks like. So this is the actual interaction between my Copilot, my orchestrator, my chat, and the LLM and behind the scenes. So if I expand this out, that's not the right one. I don't want that one. I want the graph. Just going to make that a little bit bigger. This is actually the flow that happened. My input, which is me saying, hey, I'm cold, suggest some solutions. What it is then determined, it said, I need to figure out what you're asking. And you're asking about products, okay? It's extract the intent. It is then, as I said, gone and retrieved documents from that index. It's looked at my intent, generated embedding, looked that up in the index, and then retrieved documents. So headers and installation, all that sort of stuff. Those documents have then been formatted in a way, and this is all actually being done by Python over here. We don't write that. We can customize it, which is super useful because maybe we go and look up product stock levels. We go and look up, regulations for installing it. Maybe we recommend an installer for it. That's up to us. We then figure out what is the reply needed, and we format the reply and send it back. Now, all of this, I don't have to create. Just click a few buttons and it'll do it for it. If I wanted to, I can actually create a new prompt flow. And when I do so, I can choose one of these template prompt flows. So it's a good place to start. So one of the key things I said, how am I going for time, by the way? I didn't time this at all. Because I wasn't, okay, cool, we're good. Okay, I mentioned one of the key points about this is we need to run it over and over and over again. And how do we actually evaluate that our model, our orchestrator, our Copilot, as it were, is actually doing the right thing? You can't just say unit test true or false. We have to evaluate this. We have to evaluate it continuously. And there is a lot of mechanisms that we can use to do that. And one of them is we can create an evaluation flow. And with that evaluation flow, and I won't show you because we are simply not going to have the time. If I open my product pipeline, I think this is the one, or this is actually it's a different one. Hammerbarn chat. We open up my pipeline. What I can actually do is I can use this evaluate feature, and I can create sets of questions and basically sets of questions and tests I can use to evaluate the output of our pipeline. We might run, 100 different questions. I have actually started a runtime for this, but that's going to take a few seconds. So I would then go and set that up, and I would configure this to run every day so that I can continue to be assured that the pipeline I've built, as my automated pipeline updates, my retrieval augmented generated, the index gets updated, new products come in, I can continue to be assured that my chat is not suddenly doing what Pack and Save bot did. Oh, we're not recording this, are we? We are recording this. No, hey, it was in the news, it's fine. Pack and Save, of course, had a chat bot that suggested recipes based on what you had in your pantry, and they didn't put a good set of guardrails around it. And so what it would do is you'd say, yes, I'm happy to make you chlorine as a dinner ingredient. But that's the point. We want to evaluate that. We need to get really good at this, and that is the challenge we're now facing: is how do we do this at scale? How do we take these POCs that we have these great ideas and productionize them? This is the tooling that is set up to help us do that. So with that, I'm done.
Yeah.
Perfect, Evan. Sorry about all the faffing about. I didn't have anything prepared earlier.
You got a question?
I've got a question. Yeah, fire away.
So yeah, I've got a few questions. So I know it's OpenAI Studio preview. Is this available?
It's available to anyone. It is in preview. So again, don't use it in production. But given this is more of a developer tool, I would say you can use it to produce production things, but don't rely on it to not necessarily change. You know what, you've got these things, these tasks, the retrieve documents and so on. Those tasks, the code may change before go live. You're going to see different, they're actually versions, so you might see different versions of them. So I would say you can definitely use it, read the supplemental terms, and say if you are saying, because one of the features I didn't show, which was you can actually take this model and deploy it to production. The problem, that is something I would say don't do that. If you want to deploy the model, build it outside, manage the model deployment yourself, just in case.
My next question is, you mentioned, so you choose the model and you mentioned that behind the scenes it would create a VM and what copy the data, copy the model.
It doesn't actually, so the model will, well, it depends on the model. So the model, if it's an OpenAI model, that'll stay managed by Azure OpenAI. That will completely look after that. The data itself is pulled onto the VM, or any data that you're using. So if it's a pipeline that is building the RAG index, the data is pulled in onto that VM, processed, and then the VM is ditched. It's gone, deleted. If the VM is used for your inference or running a chat pipeline, that VM will need to stay around, because obviously if it goes away, your chat doesn't work. But you can, if you're familiar with deploying or managing an application, you can do that in another way. You could run Kubernetes, you can run an app service, you could, any other way you can run an app, you can run these. So incidentally, prompt flow is actually the thing that that is actually doing all the execution work. And that is a open source SDK that you can run anywhere. It's not glued to AI Studio. It's just they've adopted that. So I would say, have a look at prompt flow and how that works, because it's designed to work for both ML data scientists and for developers. So it's got a code first approach. It's got a Visual Studio extension. You can even click this button, open up your prompt flow in Visual Studio Code and do all the UI editing, or just do code. It'll all work just with code first. There's a bunch of different types of files, Ginger 2 files that define this. Any other questions?
But I think we need to vacate.
Yeah, we need to.
Coming after
Woo.
this.
Another meeting. Yeah, I'm just coming to class. Yeah. Thanks, man.
Thanks online. We'll post the presentations on the Meetup group site and YouTube. We'll post the recording on YouTube within the coming weeks. Thank you for joining us. Bye.
Huge.